Well, hi, good morning, everybody. This is David Cross here with you today, and I wanted to create a video and go over one of my applications I've been working on, which I refer to as our DNS Admin Toolbox. But basically, what I find in my everyday use of DNS and working within DNS is I need capabilities that I want to quickly be able to search, query DNS, look up additional DNS servers, save that information, and then query different types of records on different types of equipment where I may or may not have access to the command line, and or having dig utilities or something that I can really trace back to, and then also having to deal with the complexity of the record types, how those records are formatted, and troubleshooting what that information looks like. So over the years, I found a number of utilities back in DNS libraries that I'm going to go over in another video, but in this particular case, I've implemented on top of an application who or that will give you this capability to simplify your day-to-day use. So without any more pause, let's go ahead and go into this. So the first thing is on a launch of the application, because it is a Windows.NET program, it does have the capability to locally interrogate the interfaces on the network. And so in order to seed the information that we're looking for, at least from a client perspective, when you load, it will boot into each of the interfaces and pull a unique IP address of the different servers that are defined for DNS. Now, these happen to be three of mine, so I'm going to go ahead and select those. And then it also provides a prefix. So whatever your domain prefix is for that interface, it also loads those into a predetermined list of domains, quite literally to make this just kind of a simple process. What it will then do, I have basically two choices once you've connected to the server. One is to perform an SOA query, which in its simplest form just goes out and performs a literal SOA query against this IP, and it returns a name server list or list of domains and their NS records, and then of course the serial number that is applied to the domain from the SOA query. And the second capability, which I just, out of habit of doing this because I'm always looking through the data, is the AXFR functionality that I can quickly do a zone transfer with caveats, because one, if it's a TSIG required key and you have one set up that you can create a key that you're going to use for the DNS admin, its name, and it will use that in this transaction, or if it's not TSIG required, you just deselect that functionality. The second part of this is if I wanted to do any type of queries with this data once it's actually captured, I do have some context menus that are case sensitive, whatever list you're on currently, where I can just simply do a query and it'll change the tab to the query, but perform that query against that record in DNS. And I can do that for pretty much any record in the list. It'll organize that accordingly. I can also do things like copy the row, which into a clipboard, which in case I wanted to go back and look at the records, I can go ahead and copy the things that I'm interested in, and nice little clipboard function, which I thought was great. And you can copy down into the cells, even if you're trying to capture IP addresses and things, it'll store that data for you. This also has context-sensitive strings to save the clipboard, so it'll create a little clip of that information as well as copy and paste and other information. And also while I'm here, the other utility is the ability to load a zone file, and I'm going to come back to that here shortly, but I'm going to add other functions to this as I see fit through the application. Now, whatever menu or tab you're connected to with whatever results are in this list, there is a sensitive screen capability to save to a CSV file whatever the results are, which is a nice little feature as well. Now, kind of going through the menus, once we've connected to our server and we've established what these are, the one thing to notice is that this will auto-populate whatever the zones are. So as if I keep I'm saying this as I'm typing it, if I go ahead and query another zone, and by performing a zone transfer against that zone, I'm querying and pulling out the NS records, which effectively represent other domain delegation. So whatever this server knows of in delegation, it then generates a NS record capable thing, and it populates this list of domains, which then gets saved at a later time. So as I query my Active Directory domain and then do a zone transfer, you'll notice it picked up all the underscore zones and all of the AD sensitive zones that I do have knowledge of from delegation in this particular zone. So very capable, very cool. And then you can then go and also populate the servers. So if I wanted to go then and query my Active Directory MSDCS and maybe perhaps do a zone transfer of that zone, I could then do that transfer as well. And this one here does not require TSIG because it just allows for the server IP zone transfer. Now the other screens, we'll go ahead and close this down here. Well, actually, let me change this back to the server we were working on and my automate my IP zone here. And just change that. And then the incremental zone transfers. So once I have a SOA, let me just select it and make sure, I can copy that over, but I can either through a date selector have it automatically create a serial number, which generates, basically what that date and time is. Or I can go in and copy that and then maybe just increment it back one or two and see if there's any records, which of course this one does. So this zone is a little bit older in date, so the date time stamp would not work there. But by having that serial number and kind of falling back a few, I can then see all of the different SOA changes, each one of these representing a different record. And I can expand this window out as well in 1 second. Well, I thought it would be easy to resize this video while I was working on it, but that is not so easy. So this data does expand. This windows can be maximized. You get the full capacity of the screen. Also, you can expand any one of these different tabs that has an arrow. So if I want to look at just this workspace, I can get the most effect. This way I can do it without expanding my screens. And then, of course, bring back the menus. You just expand them back out. So I try to make best use of this as you're working through it, depending on what your results are and how you're looking at the data. But while we're here, a couple other things you'll see quickly is that as I process zone transfers, that I go out and collect what record types are in that particular zone. So then I can quickly, by selecting filter on those records at any given time. So if I'm interested in just the DNS or what the SOA is and the differences, I can quickly filter that data, clearing it. I can also filter by type. No, this one doesn't have it there, but I can query here, and then also within those results, I can also filter. So if I wanted to see for 114, I could see and pull that one particular address. Now I can also query this and then do copy and other things here too, if I wanted to manage this in another way. Okay. And then going back to my results, I can unset these filters. This will return it back to its last state in the original results. A couple other things I've been working on here are the dynamic updates, and I'm not quite done with this, but I am working on it. And what this quickly does, I can just go out and add different types of records. And let me keep this within something different. And I'm trying to work within a series of predetermined record types to kind of maintain this and control it because it is very capable once I start managing these zones and working through the data. So a couple of things here that we'll see when the actual update occurs is you'll see it relist and show you the updated records. So from here, I can add, delete, and it'll add and remove it from that zone, retransfer it, go back and forth. So it is very, very capable in terms of what we can do. And then I can also do other things here, like creating a text record. This is a test record, and we can add those as well. Setting the information up. And also that as we're creating these adds and deletes and other functions, I am auditing these. So if I had to go back at any given time and replay or update or save these, I can. And the CYA method, manual CYA method. All right. So that works really well and is very functional. And also along the same lines, because it is still a DNS update, is the RPC zones. So working within different block list or whitelisting zones, I deny, allow, whitelist, blacklist, whatever you want to call them. These are using response policy type zones through bind. DNS is what I'm working within that allow you to set up various triggers based on the type of query that the server encounters. And you have policies and rules of this trigger, so that if I have a zone that is being queried, I can tell it to, as a policy, deny, do an index domain or no data, or even redirect that to a landing page, a walled garden where we're advising the client why we did this, and blocklisted that particular site. And I've been working within a dynamic capacity within these environments that if you really set up the security to allow this, that you can have instantaneous blocking of IP addresses or DNS domains or resource records or even entire subnets at a click of a button. And it's amazing what you can do. I won't be able to, I'll come back maybe and demonstrate that because I want to get into the RPC zones more and how that works. And I'll do that in a different video. All right, but also here as we get into this, I have an IP control plugin, which you can only imagine that as we work within this data, because BT's Diamond IP control product manages DNS. It also allows us to interact with APIs for importing, exporting, adding, deleting DNS records for devices and domains. So I have, of course, big plans to provide this plugin and continue it to provide validation and checks of data, provide import facilities and capabilities, and testing and validation, and maybe some additional checks and features like comparison of A records and PTR records, ensuring that they're always there, or looking for straggled or dangling records that should be cleaned up, and some other type of reporting even that might go back and check things like what records and types of equipment based on the MAC addresses and other projects I'm working on too. Right? So that's one example of how this has worked here, and I'll show you another one here. Just show you some of the performance capabilities. I have been working on trying to get this to be the maximum performance, and so I built a zone that literally has 1 million records, and I just loaded that zone. I'm doing a zone transfer right now. I need to update some screen indicators. But that zone transfer takes about 15, 16 seconds to process. And when it's loaded, we have 1 million records that are loaded. And so it's really quite capable from a list view. I'm using a virtual list view here for population and data and responsiveness in this. So the next thing I'm working on is how to filter this data now that I have 1 million records to generate the best performance and user experience, which is quite difficult, I found, because I'm working within arrays and actually works quite well within some data, meaning that when I set a filter and reverse the filter, it works great because it's just copying over an array list or a list of array lists. And when it's filtering, though, it has to go out and process, meaning it has to parse through each of those records. So imagine 1 million times. It's looking for each of these different columns and record data sets to see if it matches this NS filter. So this takes, maybe about a minute or so to filter, which isn't really high performance. Not something I want to look at here, but for the day-to-day use and normal zones of up to a couple 100,000 records, I see the performance is almost instantaneous, very quick to work with. But once you get up around the 500,000 to million, I'm going to say that certain features I'm probably going to limit. And I am looking at other things to do here, such as breaking this into multiple types of arrays, splitting it out evenly into maybe, say, 10, 100,000 array list, and then doing some parallel transaction processing, which is pretty cool in .NET, that I can go out and query each of those simultaneously, wait for the results, and then just kind of present the results back to the client. And of course, in doing so, I'll have some visual indicators letting you know when you can pop up and when it's ready to look at, and then you can go back, say, into the tab and continue working doing something else. All right, so that's a quick view. This, well, of course, there it goes as I've started to finish the video. So as you can see, that's quite a long time for just 1 million record sort. And if I go back and clear this, of course, it's instantaneous, like I mentioned. So if I can get this to work within that variable set, I think all things would be great. I have a lot of plans for this tool, a lot of capabilities I'm looking at, some security I'm going to have to implement, a lot of credits I'm going to have to give to the provider of this, again, which I'll follow up with, and another video on the RPC zone updates you can expect soon. All right, well, great. Thanks for bearing with me. And if you're interested in this project, I'm close to a beta release. Let me know. Send an email to contact@IPDevNet.com with your name, email, your interest, kind of what you do, if you don't mind. and I'll send you the download link information when it's ready, and give me your feedback and give some test results. Thanks. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.